It was well past midnight, the kind of night where the forest goes quiet except for the occasional snap of a twig or the distant call of an owl. I was lying in my sleeping bag, staring at the nylon ceiling of my tent, half asleep but still twitchy after the ranger's warning about black bears in the area. Every sound carried extra weight. A gust of wind rustled the leaves. Bear. A pine cone dropping nearby. Bear. Then came the sound, something brushing against the side of the tent. Low, deliberate, and far too close for comfort. My heart kicked like a jackrabbit. I held my breath, listening, trying to tell if it was sniffing or scratching. A few seconds later the noise came again, louder this time. Something was rummaging near the fire pit where I'd left my pack leaning against a log. My mind filled with visions of a massive bear tipping through camp, searching for crumbs, maybe even curious about the odd shape of a tent. I could almost feel the weight of its shadow moving outside. Every camping lecture I'd ever heard about food storage, bear bags, and make yourself big rushed into my brain all at once. My hands trembled as I fumbled for the flashlight by my side. I thought, this is it, the story my friends will tell about how I wrestled, or was mauled by, a bear. But I didn't move right away. I just lay there, heart hammering, waiting for the courage to unzip the flap and face whatever waited in the dark. Finally, I couldn't take the suspense any longer. With one deep breath, I flicked on my flashlight and yanked open the zipper in one motion, bracing myself for a set of glowing eyes and a hulking shape. Instead, the beam caught two tiny glints, beady eyes staring right back at me. The beast froze, cheeks puffed out, tail twitching in indignation. A squirrel. Just a plain, everyday squirrel, standing bold as brass on my pack strap, a half-mangled granola bar wrapper clutched in its little paws. I exhaled so hard I nearly fell forward out of the tent. The tension drained away, replaced with a laugh I had to choke down so I wouldn't wake the whole camp. There it was, my terrifying midnight intruder, sitting like a king of the forest with crumbs all over its whiskers. It did the night before, but when I stepped out of my tent the memory still had me chuckling. The air was crisp, damp with dew, and the fire pit was just a circle of gray ash. My buddies were already stirring, one stretching, another fussing with the coffee pot balanced on a grate. They spotted my grin right away and demanded to know what was so funny. I told them I'd had a run-in with a bear, dragging out the word so they'd lean in closer. Their faces went wide-eyed for a moment, until I confessed that the ferocious beast was actually a squirrel with a taste for trail mix. That brought the laughter, the kind that bends your ribs and makes your eyes water. One of them slapped the table and said, "So what? You gonna start telling folks you survived a squirrel attack?" Another chimed in, "Guess we'd better start hanging our granola bars in the trees too, huh?" I showed them the chewed up wrapper as proof, and that only set them off again. Still, they admitted they'd been just as jumpy when they first started camping, mistaking every rustle in the brush for something bigger than it really was. It seemed like a rite of passage, the false alarm, the heart-racing moment, and the sheepish realization afterward. As we sipped our coffee, the forest came alive again. Birds chattered from the treetops, and a chipmunk darted across camp as if mocking me. I found myself watching every flicker of movement with new eyes, not just with caution, but with a kind of respect for how small creatures can stir such big emotions. The night's tension had turned into a story I knew would follow me around for years. We packed up camp not long after breakfast, the sun just beginning to burn through the thin veil of morning mist. My pack felt heavier than usual, though I suspect that was from all the ribbing I was taking. Every 5 minutes someone would rustle the bushes and whisper, "Careful, he's back," or pretend to spot a squirrel shadow trailing me. At one point, one of the guys even tied a little tuft of grass to a stick and waved it behind me like a tail. I'll admit, I laughed right along with them. Better to embrace the joke than fight it. The trail wound uphill through a grove of oaks, their leaves rattling in the breeze like drop encounters. By then, even I was imagining headlines like, "Camper survives close call with rogue rodent." The more ridiculous the jokes got, the lighter my pack felt. We hiked for hours that day, through meadows buzzing with insects and under the cool shadow of pines. The forest never once felt threatening, even though I knew there were black bears somewhere out there. Somehow, after facing down a squirrel, the mystery of what might lurk in the dark seemed less frightening and more comical. That night, back at a new campsite farther up the trail, we sat around the fire with the stars spread out like salt on a black tablecloth. The teasing had mostly died down, replaced by the usual camp chatter. Who'd brought the best jerky, which boots were rubbing the worst, and where tomorrow's hike might lead us. As the flames cracked and the smoke curled into the dark, I found myself thinking again about that little squirrel. It struck me how fear can swell in the silence of the woods, growing bigger than it deserves. In the dark, my mind had built a bear out of a rustle, a predator out of a paw-sized shadow. And yet, the truth had been small enough to fit in the palm of my hand. The lesson, I realized, wasn't just about animals, but about the way we handle life's unknowns. Sometimes the bear we dread is nothing more than a squirrel after a midnight snack. We still need to be cautious, sure, but it helps to remember that not every sound in the night is danger creeping closer. As I drifted off in my sleeping bag, the forest whispered around me. Owls calling from the treetops, something tiny scurrying through the leaves, the sigh of wind in the trees. None of it sounded threatening anymore. It was just the soundtrack of the wild, a reminder that we weren't alone out here, but we weren't unwelcome either. In the end, that squirrel gave me more than a scare and a chewed-up granola bar wrapper. It gave me a story that would be retold around many fires, each time getting a little funnier. And it gave me a bit of perspective. Fear is often just imagination in the dark, waiting for the light of morning to shrink it back down to size.